Hey, didn't see you there. Read a book again. One Day in the Life of Ivan Desnovich Sholzeniski. Ooh, rough picture. Legitimately. Sholzeniski, there's all the books I've chosen to read. The opening videos have a purpose. Welcome to Mr. Frank's Neighborhood. This book in particular, Sholzeniski is a former member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He ends up writing 2 books about the evils of the Gulag system. This is one of them. Honestly, 2 phenomenal books if you're interested in that topic. Pretty messed up stuff. But today, Cold War, getting hot. So, a question has come up a few times, other than my hair, what am I going to do with Earl? Earl's on vacation right now. Him and his wife, they're up north in their cabin. You guys didn't care about that, but give me the heads up on that. I'm getting some color here. Was outside a lot this weekend. Nice weekend. Tan Clan. Hashtag Tan Clan. And there's the first minute already wasted. So, a lot of questions have kind of been about, geez, I already lost my train of thought. Give me a second. No, not coming back. Oh well. Here you go. Never mind. Figured it out. So, hot war versus a Cold War. It's called the Cold War because the United States and the Soviet Union never actually fired shots directly at each other. They may have supported different countries who had fought the United States. So, for example, in Vietnam, did the Soviets fund the North Vietnamese with military aid, technology, training, so on? Yeah, they did. In Afghanistan, did we fund the Afghani rebels with training, technology, military aid? Yeah, we did, but it wasn't directly us versus them. A hot war is like World War II. Us versus Japan. That's a hot war. It's actually us against them. So that's why it's called the Cold War. But the Cold War does get hot. The first place it gets hot is in a very unexpected place. And it's in a place that impacts us quite a bit today, and that's North Korea. So today's essential question is, how does the Cold War and North Korea still impact us today? Good essential question because North Korea is always in the news for stuff. It's kind of one of the last remnants of the Cold War in terms of like countries. Kind of interesting how we got there. So during World War II, because we're allies with Russia, we agree that once we defeat Japan, because Japan had conquered Korea during WW2, the big one, that we would split Korea in half. The northern half would go to a pro-communist individual named Kim Il-sung, human garbage, and the bottom half would be a free market capitalistic democracy. So it's divided along the 38th parallel. Okay, and so from 1945 up until 1950, that's the way it works. What ends up happening is in 1949, U.S. Secretary of State Dean Atkinson, he makes this speech talking about United States protecting different countries in the Asian Pacific area, the Pacific Rim. He talks about Japan, talks about Vietnam. He doesn't mention Korea. And it's not because we weren't going to protect Korea. It was just he didn't mention it. And so Kim Il-sung, the human garbage leader that ends up having a human garbage son, human garbage grandson, who may or may not be dead at the recording of this video, who knows, that he hears that and believes the United States will not come to South Korea's aid if they were to invade. And so he goes to Stalin in Moscow, and Stalin is still kind of licking his wounds after the Berlin airlift, and Stalin looks at this as a great opportunity to kind of get back at the United States for what happened in Berlin. His loss in Berlin will now be his victory in South Korea. So he gives Kim Il-sung, human garbage, the okay to invade down in South Korea. He's assured by Kim Il-sung that once he gets into South Korea, the South Koreans will rise up and join him. And so Stalin gives him military aid, supplies, technology, aircraft, everything. And on June 25th, 1950, Kim Il-sung, human garbage, they'll have a human garbage family that's still human garbage, but that human garbage, Kim Il-sung, is dead, invades South Korea. And what ends up happening is, and we're going to go with the whiteboard of knowledge, patent pending, is if this is Korea, oh, great Korea, you can't see it. If this is the original 38th parallel, what happens is They push the South Koreans down to right here. It's called the Pusan Perimeter, but basically down to the corner, like kind of tip of Korea. And so this is where things kind of stand. And the United States under Truman decides we're getting involved. And we're getting involved because, one, this goes into the policy of containment, that we can't let South Korea fall. But also in a speech to the American public, he makes, and this is very important for kind of the long term, the ideological reasoning why we have to be there. He paints communism as the most evil form of government ever created by man, and he kind of juxtapositions it against the United States way of life. And that if we let South Korea fall, these Koreans, they will succumb to this evil, evil form of government. And so General Douglas MacArthur, there he is, ends up being put in charge of all U.S. and UN forces inside of the Korean Peninsula. What he does is he coordinates an attack where we're going to counterattack here and push him back, but at the same time at Incheon, he lands right here. That's horrible drawing, but it's a massive success. After this, they're able to push through Incheon, push the North Koreans back all the way up to the border with China. Here's where things turn south. Truman tells MacArthur, don't go past the Yalu River. Intelligence has said the Chinese don't really care what's going on down here, but if you pass the Yalu River, they're going to get a little nervous about American forces being on their border, and they're going to counterattack. MacArthur was many things. An egomaniac was certainly one of them. He believes that China will not counterattack. He goes past the Yalu River, and the Chinese attack with almost two full divisions. Americans are basically outnumbered in some places 20-1, and this leads us to this little place right here called Chosin. It's the Chosin Reservoir. It is a defeat for the U.S. military, but it's one of those defeats that is more like heroic in nature. We have around like 10,000 Americans that are able to hold off over 200,000 Chinese and successfully retreat from that position to safety. Those who survived are called the Chosin Few. The weather was horrible. It was below zero. It was freezing. The fact that they were able to hold that position and successfully retreat while honestly killing hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of Chinese was absolutely incredible. It's one of the greatest stories in American military history, especially for defeat, and allows the United States to kind of basically like retool itself for the fight. What ends up occurring is that the Chinese come down, push the Americans to here, Americans push the Chinese back, and when all's said and done, an armistice is signed establishing North and South Korea as two separate entities, with the 38th parallel being the line of demarcation. Technically, the Korean War is still actually going on. They never signed a peace treaty. It doesn't look like they're going to be doing that anytime soon. One of the crazy things is that the North Koreans, when the armistice was signed, one of the parts that they wanted was all North Korean prisoners of war to be returned back to them. And South Koreans were fine with that, but what they said was, we're going to give these POWs a choice, that they can either stay here in South Korea or they can go back to North Korea. Over 75% of them decided to stay in South Korea. That's very telling that in a few short years, like, they didn't have 75 years to turn this into a prison state just quite yet, but just in 5 years, the average Korean understood, the North Korean understood, that things had gotten so bad in North Korea, I'd rather live in South Korea. And so 75% of them, those are lucky individuals being POWs somehow, stayed in South Korea. We have some long-term stuff here, some long-term stuff in a very short period of time. So Korean War, in terms of U.S. military history, is officially a tie, even though you could definitely make the case it's a victory for those in South Korea, because certainly they get to live in one of the most prospering free nations in the world. That is not a thing if the United States does not get involved. So there's a long-term thing. You have a couple million South Koreans who are very thankful we got involved here. A second major takeaway in terms of long-term stuff is it sets the standard for the Cold War in terms of the containment policy. Containment was just a policy on paper until the Korean War. Once Truman confirms that the United States will get involved, wherever communism is trying to take root, that gives kind of heads up to Stalin and the rest of communist countries or communist powers. The United States is going to back up what they say on this stuff. Other things, it's one of the first times in military history where the country with the greatest weapon did not use it. We could have used the atomic bomb. We did not use it during the Korean War. There's some debate on whether or not we should have done that, but we didn't. So there's a takeaway. Another takeaway from this entire thing is the long-term obvious impact that North Korea is still a country today. That if MacArthur does not go past the Yalu River, the Korean Peninsula is probably united, and we aren't dealing with what we're dealing with today in terms of North Korea having nuclear weapons and North Korea being basically a thorn in our side for the last 75 years. The Korean War, unfortunately, is the forgotten war. Vietnam is the one that really gets all the press, and because it falls between the big one, World War II, and the Vietnam War, which for cultural and political reasons is so interesting, the Korean War is often forgot, which is unfortunate because you have the Incheon landing, which is one of the greatest military invasions in human history. You have the Chosin Reservoir, which is one of the most heroic actions in American military history that are unfortunately forgotten by most Americans. So if you have the opportunity to, if you're able to go to DC, please visit the Korean War Memorial. Again, the individuals who fought in the Korean War, unfortunately, have not got the recognition they deserved. But the Korean War is the first hot war of the Cold War, which is weird to say. In general and stuff, the Korean War does set the standard. The United States is going to defend these countries who are under communist threat. And it sends a strong message to Stalin that the United States is willing to uphold this policy of containment, and they're willing to use military force to do it. However, Truman's time as president is coming to an end. We're going to get into the Eisenhower administration next, and Eisenhower has a very different take on how he should handle the Soviets than President Truman. But that's for next time. Let's do one question. I'll keep us under 13 minutes. My bad. I apologize. Question. Do I think movies that are coming out will make less or more money with theaters being closed? Hayden A. Good question. Man, a long question. They're going to make less money for sure. I think they'll try to figure out a way to do more streaming stuff, like having to go to Amazon and just buy it off Amazon for like a slightly reduced price or a slightly increased price. But yeah, certainly movie theaters are going to struggle quite a bit, and movies will make less money during this time. Great question. As always, write down your questions. This guy looks very scared. I'd be scared if I were him. Somebody's trying to kill him. Entire life. So write down your questions, answer the questions, do some push-ups, some bicep curls, some tricep push-downs. You want to compliment. You want a full-looking arm. You got to do both. All right, that's all I got. Woo!